We're recording? Okay. Roman art, everybody. Again, presented by me. I had my friend Will help me make it. It was edited by my friend Tim. And the research was done by my friend Cole. Although the parts where it lists me, that's more or less an oversight of helping them. You know, there's a lot to making these. So what is it? Of course, Roman art is the style utilized by the Roman Empire. The style was implemented through various mediums such as sculpting, painting, metalwork, etc. If you've ever looked at Roman art and you've ever compared it to other art styles of the time they developed through conquest, as was the Roman motto at the time, you may call it a copy of a lot of it. It's more a celebration of the styles, if you would. It's very pastiche in its design. It drew heavily upon the cultures that it absorbed within the empire. Very Greek, Egyptian aesthetics, which largely build off of very ancient aesthetics itself. You know, the cultures Rome was very well known for absorbing in terms of art, at least, was the Greeks, Italics, Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Etruscan, etc. It's also important to note at this time, art had taken a very different approach. In previous times, art, like an Egyptian, was very religious-centric, or in the Greek sense, it was very philosophically based. At this point, art was very vain, if you would. It was only used by the luxurious to show off their wealth and power and precedence. You know, I got a cool statue of myself in my yard. What do you got? Nothing, exactly. When was it used? It's important to note that, of course, it was used during the reign of the Roman Empire. So that would roughly be 509 BC to 330 CE, although it could be argued that it did last a lot longer through the Romanesque styles and Byzantine styles. There's also important to note, I'll say that a lot, that it could be argued that Roman art doesn't exactly change in terms of aesthetic or practice. Rather, it adopts new styles. As it grows, it absorbs new cultures and in turn incorporates that into its art styles. Although, you could say that Roman style art and everything fell with the Roman Empire, although it definitely continued through the Byzantines later on. As we have the Roman era painting here of what I assume is a family, and then we have our very religious-centric paintings later on through the Byzantines. Very fun people. Not get over the fact they were once Roman. Where was it used? Of course, Roman art was definitely used in the Roman Empire, although it's important to note that Roman art itself would be carried very far past the actual borders of the Roman Empire at the time, thanks to their heavy investment in trade and trade routes like the Silk Road. So of course, the Roman Empire was pretty big by the end of it, until we get about there. Just having fun here. This is roughly the end of the Roman Empire, the largest it ever got, not including its territories of Germania, Sarmatia, etc. Trivia! You get candy if you answer correctly. So, Pliny the Elder is regarded as one of the best-known naturalists and philosophical Romans of his times. Pliny is also well known for having died in the Pompeii disaster caused by Mount Vesuvius. Anyone to take a guess of how he died specifically? Because he was either A, consumed by lava, which he tried to outrun to prove to others that he was not lame, medically of course. He died of a heart attack after being scared by the sound of the volcanic explosion. C, he died from asphyxiation due to exposure to volcanic fumes, which was exacerbated by his famously weak and narrow windpipe. Or he died from a boulder crushing him while he was escaping from the volcanic explosion. Very low quality image, I'm so glad it shows up like that.
B.
B? No.
Dang it.
D.
Nope. C. Yep.
That's what I was going to say.
Narrow windpipe. Apparently he was very famous for his weak windpipe. Weird detail, I know, but...
The reason I was going to say C is because of the vocab words.
Famous practitioners of Roman art. We got Publius Aelius Fortunatus, famous Roman artist who lived during the 2nd century, but is better known for his transition from a slave to a freedman. There's not a lot of artwork around him, we just know of his life. Then we have the Malibu painter, who is kind of the opposite of Publius, considering the fact we don't know his actual name, we just have artworks that were signed the Malibu painter. Roman artist who lived in Egypt at the time, in the city of Malibu, and is famous for his fine mummy portraits. This is a big part of Roman art in Egypt at the time. It could be considered Egyptian art, but honestly at this point it was more Roman than Egyptian. Gaius Fabius Pictor, another fine mummy portraitist. Considered one of the earliest and most distinguished artists in Roman history. Dated as early as 304 BC, he's famous for using a more Etruscan style, if you would. His family calling him a disgrace for being a painter. You won't get old seeing that.
Why were they called? What were mummy portraits exactly? Were they portraits of mummies or the people that were in the mummies?
Well, by the time the Roman Empire had taken control of Egypt, the big in vogue thing for a lot of Romans at the time to do would be mummified. But considering the cultural implications around that, a lot of people didn't want to put in the large spectacle and effort into creating, tombs and everything. So they would simply create a cost-cutting measure of having your portrait painted onto a wooden slab that would be placed over your mummified corpse.
What is Etruscan mean?
Etruscan? It's a style of art that was found at the time around the European area. It's more or less a Mediterranean style, if you would.
Wow, easy there, Chandler.
I'm sorry, he's in the back. I can't help it.
So
Historical significance.
why are were the tombs called like a sarcophagus? Is that what they were?
Sarcophagus, tomb, etc. kind of goes back and forth depending on how you want to put it. A sarcophagus more or less would refer, in this case, to the coffin that a mummy is placed in.
Oh, okay.
Historical significance. Roman art itself is very weird in where it lies in historical significance in that it did not create a lot of noticeable pieces on its own. What's mostly significant about it is how it preserved a large number of Greek pieces, Egyptian pieces that would have been lost to history had not the Roman Empire stepped in and made a large amount of copies and mock-ups, really. And the art present, again, like many other previous cultures, allowed us to view the culture itself without having any actual written accounts about it. Although, with the advent of Latin and writing, we knew a lot about the Romans outside of the art as well. And again, Rome reflects a large amalgamation of different styles coming together to create a semi-unique style that would go on to influence later styles, such as the medieval styles of the time. It's also very strange in where it lies in that, like America in a way, Rome was very fixated on looking into the past to try to draw previous styles and older styles to create something new, which isn't largely seen in previous or even further styles until roughly the Renaissance. Here we got some examples. A lot of these it's very hard to find actual Roman pieces that were not originally Greek pieces but that were just copied. So this is Gaius Urius Caesar, there's Hercules, and that is a medallion made for what was most likely a noble's son. And again, like I said for the last one, for the Greek paintings, whenever they were making sculptures like this, they never made them just white. They did paint over them to give them a skin-like texture to make them look more human. It's just that with natural wear and tear over time, they would eventually develop into their white marble-esque base. Here we have our resources. Any questions? Yes?
Did the Romans sort of, when they took inspiration from others' art styles or straight up copied them, did they cite their sources or did they say we made this up?
Well, they were very, passionate about it. They were not very abashed to saying we just stole this from the Greeks. As a way of legitimizing themselves, they were not shy about where they got influences from. If you consider how the Romans worked in that they would take over an area and try to integrate the culture into it, it also makes sense that they would not want to try to totally disintegrate a culture that they were trying to integrate at the same time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Any for you. Anybody else? And that's the end of the Roman art. Next period, we'll get on to pre-Columbian. Probably if you could turn the camera off.
You look like Caesar.
Well, thank you. I gotta think of what to do